Your alumni love helping students and fellow graduates, but they simply don't have time to attend every event, answer every call, or learn yet another online platform. With Protopia, making an impact is easier than it's ever been before. Ever. There's no new app to sign up for or use in our already busy lives. Students, alumni, or even staff can quickly ask for advice or networking via a simple form, email, or text. Protopia's artificial intelligence searches the institution's existing alumni data to find the best experts that are the most likely to assist based on experience, availability, location, and other factors. Each matched alum receives a direct, blind email to ask them to help, giving alumni full control over if and how they want to respond, whether that's by email, call, or a virtual meeting. And if it's not a good time, Protopia's AI simply reaches out to the next alum until the question has been answered. The student receives advice right into her email inbox and is coached to engage the alum to grow her professional network. Finally, our rich dashboard lets staff follow along, view detailed engagement analytics, and access updated alumni data. Protopia. Simple for them, simple for you.
Hey everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for listening to Alumless for today, Friday, September 27th, 2024. This is the Depth and Breadth in Engagement edition. I'm Ryan Catherwood, Senior Consultant with CMAC, and I'm joined by CMAC CEO Chris Marshall. How's it going, Chris?
Good, Ryan. Good to see you. I think your title is a little bigger than just what you just said. It's got to be a bigger...
I feel like there's only so much time for titles, but I appreciate that. Thanks for the boost. On the show, we talk about engagement strategies in advancement, and we are live today. So be sure to say hello in the chat section of the LinkedIn event. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have any questions for Chris or myself or today's special guest, Heather Junod from the University of Central Florida, we would love to have them. And if we can't answer them in the live show, we're going to answer them in the podcast edition, which, of course, you should subscribe to make sure to hear the 30-minute bonus segment with each of our special guests, of course, with Heather today. And grateful for Max Slyson and the team at Protopia, of course, for their continued support with us and being a presenting sponsor of Alumless. Chris, it's Friday. We had the chance to connect in person last week. We were actually out on the West Coast at Gonzaga University, which was a really fun trip. This was a advancement-wide strategic planning initiative that we were working on. Maybe I thought we could kick things off, just a few takeaways from our West Coast journey.
Yeah, it was one of 5 states I was in the month of September, and that included Washington State, Texas, Hawaii, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, technically where I live. But so it was a lot of travel, but it was a great trip. Beautiful part of the country, Spokane, Washington.
Yeah.
Great campus. Pretty impressive place. Most people know Gonzaga, and it's Gonzaga, like a Zag. They go by the Zag.
Not a Zaga. It's not a Zaga.
It's what they say on television out here on the East Coast. Everybody knows it because they're a basketball team, but they have some great programs. Really cool campus sort of student life. And what's really the other thing, I didn't realize this until we got there, but Bing Crosby is their famous alum. I thought that was a cool anecdote. But the other thing, Ryan, that you and I noticed, and Bonnie Devlin, our partner from Washburn McGoldrick, was with us as we were preparing for and at the conference. This is an advancement shop that has their act together. They are very organized, very strategic, very thoughtful, very metric driven. And we help a lot of clients who are at the starting line to get up and running, and they are sprinting down the track at Gonzaga. So it was a challenging project to take on to help a fairly advanced shop think about strategic planning at their next level. They have an old plan. It was time for the new plan, and I think we made a good dent and made a good progress. Yeah. But what a cool trip!
Yeah, planning that trip, I was like, gosh, I hope we got to really get our act together, because these folks have such a good set of strategies already in place. But we often look at schools that are trying to figure out their next generation of engagement strategies, and almost every time the conversation includes the importance of approaches that ensure that the institution is thinking about both the depth and breadth of engagement, which we're going to talk about today with Heather. Why is that? Like, what's going on? Like, why are we thinking about that? Is that new or different than before?
Yeah, I think traditionally, my sense of the industry and many alumni shops to this day think about breadth of engagement. Even the case metrics, as you know, are designed to look at how many people can we get under the tent. As many people as possible is success in that model. And I think it's something we should strive for. I think it's something worth measuring. I love the case model. Of course, I'm a big proponent of it. And I think it's something that we should continue to focus on as an industry. But the depth part, what happened, for example, right during the pandemic, we saw a huge increase in breadth of engagement because people all of a sudden could access content and engagement activities like this. They were online and they weren't having to go somewhere to get it. They didn't go to campus. They didn't have to go to a club, happy hour or whatever. And we saw an increase in breadth. But what I was worried about during the pandemic was how deeply are we connecting with them through an online source? It's not that depth of engagement that we look for. And when you have depth, you have volunteers who are more committed. And at the end of the day, the depth leads to the ability to fundraise at a higher level, at a higher percentage with higher dollar gifts. And I think it depends on where you are in your evolution of your program. I think you need both breadth and depth. But I think more schools are thinking about the depth component of it. And we have someone coming on who's done a lot of thinking about both these components. So I'm looking forward to hearing from her.
Well, that's a perfect transition. Like it was teed up for us to bring out our special
You might have
guest.
Scripted it.
Maybe it was even scripted. We'll bring out our fantastic special guest today, Heather Junod from the University of Central Florida. Heather is the Associate Vice President for Alumni Engagement and Annual Giving. Heather, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be with you today.
We're grateful for you and your time for being a guest on Alumless. And I thought we could talk a little bit about your professional journey to get things going. Heather, you've been with UCF for going on 16 years now with roles on the annual giving side of the shop for quite a long time. First and before sort of taking over that merged alumni engagement and annual giving team. Can you share a little bit about what it's been like the last few years as you've taken on the alumni engagement piece of the puzzle, and what surprised you the most?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I've been at UCF for almost 16 years now. I started as an assistant director in our College of Education, raising money for the College of Education. And did that for about 3 years, dabbled in major gifts and had some success. But in my career leading up to my time at UCF, I was more focused on annual giving campaigns and in the roles that I had held. So when an opportunity to create an Office of Annual Giving was proposed here at UCF, I threw my name in the hat because I thought, this is where my experience has been. It's what I've really enjoyed. And so I was lucky enough to be selected to take on that role. And at the time we were a team of 3, a relatively small shop with a very small budget. And so I spent several years growing our alumni engagement team, both in terms of staffing and budget resources. And that was a lot of fun. But when I was able to, well, I should back up a little bit. Mike Morseberger, when he joined UCF as our VP for advancement, recognized that we on the alumni engagement side of the house and on the development side of the house were incredibly siloed. There was not much interaction between the two. If you asked people on campus, if we fell under the same umbrella, they'd be like, no, those are separate divisions here at the university. I mean, we were incredibly siloed at the time. And Mike said, I'm so serious about us all working together. I'm going to take annual giving and I'm going to move you on the org chart under alumni engagement. And I'm going to physically move your offices over to the Fairwinds Alumni Center, which was a huge move for us at the time. We were like, really? Like, we don't even talk to that. Like, there was just sort of, we would have occasionally these sort of like all team meetings, but like we just did not interact. So we were like, okay, let's see how this experiment goes. And it's been so rewarding for me personally and professionally. I developed such a greater, knowledge of and respect for the work of the annual giving team, getting to be located in the same office and and really starting to understand all of the effort that goes in to building the front end of the pipeline through engagement was just super intriguing to me. And when our senior associate vice president for engagement decided to retire, I was lucky enough to get to step into the role on an interim basis, and then was asked to take the role permanently. And I would never have expected that this is where I would be today. But it's been such an incredible journey. And to be able to kind of be the representative for alumni at my alma mater has just been such an honor.
I've been to the beautiful Fairwinds Alumni Center. It's an awesome facility. I'm sure it's fun to roll up to work there each day. And thank you. That was awesome. That was awesome background. Before I ask you another question, Heather, just want a quick shout out to Jenny, Jesse, Mike, Lindsay, and Scott for hopping on, watching us live today. And I actually just talked with Lindsay Crum this morning, who is kicked off the second month of her brand new job at Wayne State University. So congrats, Lindsay, on that new job, and thanks for watching. But Heather, in the opening, Chris was talking a little bit about the importance of strategies that both help scale engagement, but also specifically target different segments. How have you been thinking about this particular challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan. We have over 380,000 living alumni, and we're graduating 17 to 18,000 students annually. So we will never have enough staff or a budget large enough to reach all of those alumni without thinking thoughtfully about how we're using technology to scale our efforts. I think for us, a really good example of that is our Knights Network platform, a professional engagement platform that we have here at UCF with over 10,000 registered individuals. We have one staff person who leads our professional engagement program. So think career services types of activities. And if it was just Tiffany and only Tiffany doing that work, we would be so bound by the time that she has in the office and, her, 40-ish plus hours a week, but leveraging Knights Network and creating that platform where we can have alumni offer flash mentorship opportunities, resume reviews, all of those types of activities happening without us having to be in control of it or to actually staff it has been huge for us. And I think as we continue to grow at such a rapid rate, scale and activities that we can scale will be important. And then how we leverage technology to do that is also going to be the only way that we get there.
I was mentioning in the open about how Gonzaga's got their act together. Another place that I've seen it is in your shop, Heather. When we started looking at the engagement metrics, you showed us these dashboards that you've created over the years, and we were like, I can count on 3 fingers schools where I've seen similar versions of it, and yours are fantastic. In fact, on your behalf, I brag about your work, and I have shared, with your permission, with a few other clients who are looking at it, and it's phenomenal what you've done there. And I'm curious, how has it helped you make decisions, drive strategy, think about resource allocation? How are you using and you're using the case model? Shout out to Jenny Cook-Smith, who's on here. But you have a very detailed dashboard for this that tells you a lot. And how you're using the data is the question I have for you.
Yeah, I'll have to give like a huge high five to Angie Shaw, our assistant vice president for alumni engagement, who really led the charge with our IT team to develop those dashboards. We were early adopters to the case modes of engagement. And I think part of that has to do with my development and background, my background in development, sorry. But when I joined this team, I could see all of the really great work that was happening on the engagement side of the house, but there was no real way to demonstrate the value or show ROI. And in development, it's the number of visits you go on, the number of proposals you submit, the number of dollars, the amount of the dollars that you raise. And that's really how your success is defined. And I felt like in alumni engagement, we didn't really have a framework or a structure like that, because typically you report up to a VP of advancement who has come from a development background. And so they see success in very black and white metrics. And we just didn't have that here. It was, well, they threw a really great party, but to what end? So adopting the case modes and creating these dashboards has been incredibly helpful for us. We wanted to participate in the case engagement survey, but it was a really heavy lift for us to be able to provide all that data on an annual basis. So the dashboards allowed us to be able to look at that data on a regular basis. And when the case team asked us for it, we were able to produce it relatively quickly rather than having to recreate the wheel on an annual basis. But so much effort goes into being able to report on those metrics. It's kind of like, well, if you're going to have all this data and you're going to be part of the survey, you should be using this data.
Exactly right. Yep.
To be thoughtful about your decision-making process. And for us, we've been looking at a number of different things. What modes are converting engaged alumni to donors at a higher rate? What combination of modes are converting engaged alumni to donors? It helps us to look at breadth and depth across engagement, but to really be thoughtful about what new programs we need to create. Because ultimately we are here to build the pipeline for philanthropy. And being thoughtful about this data and how we look at it and leverage it allows us to do that in a more strategic way.
Heather, we often talk about the CMAC ABCD method, right? We sort of talked about scale and sort of the importance of providing opportunities for people to participate that maybe aren't sort of managed opportunities, right? Mm-hmm. But the ABCD method is a little bit different approach where it's thinking more about depth. Can you think about and share a bit more about how you all have worked to design the ABCD strategy that's a good fit for you and the team there at UCF?
Yeah, well, I'll say we're working on it. It's still very much, I think, a work in progress, but we are making good progress. So I think that's the key for us right now. When Rod Grabowski, who's now our Senior Vice President for Advancement and Partnerships, joined us about 2 years ago, when he was evaluating our program, I think one of the first things that he picked up on is that our engagement skews a little bit heavier towards the C's and D's in that sort of development, structure. And at UCF, I think for a little bit of context, our B's would start at about $500,000. So alumni and prospects who are rated at $500,000 plus. And a lot of our engagement hits the C and the D level prospects. And he said, that's great. That's amazing because we have to start somewhere. But I'd like to challenge you to think about ways that you can try to engage more A and B prospects, especially as we're getting ready to go into this next campaign. And so that's really been our focus. We know that we're doing a great job at the lower end of that pipeline. But how are we going to be more thoughtful about engaging the A's and B's? And we've done a couple of things. We're starting a program. This isn't a new program, but it's something we're adopting from other institutions, but a program to engage the fastest growing alumni-owned businesses. We think that a program like that will skew heavier A and B. It will allow us to engage people who might not currently be engaged in one of the programs that we have. It'll give us a ton of data on those companies and on the alumni who own them. So that's an example. I know a lot of other institutions have travel programs. We tried that at UCF many years ago, and it just wasn't successful for us. We're a relatively young university, and I think it was probably more than a decade ago. But Rod's like, let's give it a shot again. Let's see what we can do with a travel program. The alumni are a decade older. They're a decade more seasoned in their careers. And could this be a time to launch a travel program geared more towards the A and the B prospects? And so we've done that. Our trips won't start until the fall of next year, but the program is live, and we're excited to see how that works here for us. The response has been overwhelming. So I think that this could be a great opportunity for us. And then regionally, what we're hearing from our alumni in our regional communities is that we would love to be involved with UCF in Atlanta, but the programming skews younger. And it's not necessarily the right fit for me. I'm in my 50s, I have a family, I'm more seasoned in my career. I'm not really part of the watch party crowd anymore. So what kind of opportunities, can you bring to people like me in Atlanta or DC and New York? And so we're really starting to look at academic-based programming, days of service, things that don't necessarily happen in a bar, things that aren't necessarily like networking nights. But yeah, just trying to be really thoughtful about expanding the kind of engagement that we provide and the ways that we do it.
Let me jump in real quick. Heather, thanks for that. For the folks listening on the podcast or live with us now, ABCD is a segmentation approach that I call the development lens. And that's what you're referring to. So A equals, roughly speaking, there's a lot of detail and nuance to this. We worked with Rod at Buffalo and developed this there. He brought it with him to UCF, and we're expanding on it now. As Heather said, we're kind of implementing it now and putting things in place. But A equals principal gift, yep. B is major gift, C is annual gift, D is everyone else. And when you do that at a 380,000 alumni population, you're going to have 300,000 people who are probably Ds. And that allows you to focus your resources on the 80,000 that are left that are C's, B's, and A's in a more appropriate way if your goal is that depth of engagement and you have limited resources. That's how we would think about ABCD approach.
Yeah, and not to bore you like too much with the data, but we looked at fiscal years 19 through 22 at all of our engaged alumni to try to get a sense of what our starting point is.
Great.
Like you got to know where you're starting, right?
Yep. So taking the ground, right? Yep.
Got to figure out. And so at the time we were engaging, of our engaged alumni, 87% of them were Ds, 10% were Cs, 3% were Bs, and less than 1% were As. And so that was across all of our programs over a 4-year time period. So we have not run that analysis again to sort of see where we are. We want to give it some time. A lot of the things that we have recently initiated are still new, but we're hoping that when we run this analysis again in a couple of years, we'll see some movement in those categories.
And of course, moving D's to C's is part of this as well. It's not like we're not worried about breadth, right? We're still in the equation. It's just a different way to focus and leverage your resources in a more informed way, frankly, is how we think of it. Yep.
And it sort of follows the line that, while we're not going to treat everybody exactly the same, in fact, we're actually going to devise a strategy to engage each of these different segments a little bit differently. And I think that, sometimes when we talk about that, Chris, with different audiences, that's like, we're pretty much used to something of a one size fits all approach where we have all sorts of events and initiatives, but
Yep.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of consideration, and oftentimes the ABCD work kind of comes at a B from another team within advancement, right? Which is often called donor relations, and there's sort of an interesting sort of opportunity there to sort of combine and work together, collaborate across the team. But Heather, UCF is one of the biggest schools in the country, right? And of course. The successful approach to engagement has got to involve collaboration across the colleges, the schools, the units at the university. How have you been thinking about aligning and coordinating these efforts?
Yes, I would say the coordination across the colleges has been I see Chris smiling. This has been a huge lift for us, a significant endeavor that we've been working on over the course of the last year or so. So just a little historical context. Many years ago, we used to have our colleges staffed with engagement officers, and they reported up through our office centrally. They were physically located in the colleges, but reported up through alumni engagement. And several years ago, there was a shift in that, and our alumni engagement officers that were located in the colleges started reporting up through development. And when Rod joined us, he it was very clear that his preference is a more centralized approach. So bringing those college-based engagement officers reporting up through development back under the central alumni engagement umbrella for a couple reasons. One, he wants development officers focusing on development. They aren't necessarily, our development staff, some more than others, have backgrounds in engagement, but they're not necessarily rooted in engagement best practices. And sometimes they were tasking our college-based engagement officers with more development work. which I mean isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it comes at the cost of engagement. So just really trying to be thoughtful about the alignment of the work of development and the alignment of the work of engagement. We've moved back to a model where our college-based engagement officers are reporting centrally. And so we've really staffed up this area. We hired a director of college-based engagement, and we're working to staff all of the colleges across the university. And we've had some early adopters and some success in some areas. We've got some others who are coming along more slowly. But I think that I think what I like most about this is Rod's acknowledgement that development needs to focus on development, but also protecting the time of the engagement officer too, and that engagement officers need to focus on engagement. And if we're really going to build the pipeline and be thoughtful about how we do it, then we really need people dedicated to this important engagement work in our colleges and units.
Yep. Chris, I wanted to ask you, as we're sort of wrapping things here on the first half hour, taking this a bit more high level and thinking, what are the characteristics of a program that's really figured out this depth and breadth thing?
I think it starts at the vice president level, who understands both pieces of it. And you have that in Rod, and then person in your role, Heather, same thing. But the other things that we look for, do they have a strategic plan? Are they using an annual planning cycle to look at things? Do they have an annual report? And are they using the case metrics? All those things are the first signs. Once you get past the answer yes to all of those things, the next thing is the resource allocation. How have you organized your staff? How do you organize your time of those individuals? And then how do you organize your budget? And once you get to the point where you see those components, aligned in this thinking, some focused on breadth, some focused on depth, you're going to have a program that's going to be able to do both. And have success, or turn the volume up or down as needed on either side of the breadth and depth scale of it. So those are the things I look for. Heather, though, I'm curious for you, our last question before we go to the break here. If you had to give a colleague, peer school or other school, a piece of advice, one piece of advice, where to start, what would you say to them that you've used that would help them account for the breadth and depth of engagement in their own shop? What would be the one thing you'd recommend they start thinking about?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think in thinking about breadth, what are low barrier to entry programs that are not bound by geography or region? Mm-hmm. So what is the easiest way to reconnect with their alma mater? I think sometimes we think of a board, which is sometimes years of service, and you have to be, it's bound by geography often. So are there virtual communities? For us, it's an alumni book club that was born out of COVID that has been incredibly successful. It's our Knights Network platform that I mentioned earlier. Very low barrier to entry, but depending on how engaged you choose to get, it can be very rewarding. And then we've relaunched a social media ambassador program. I always think about our alumni who live in maybe states where we have very few alumni. We don't have communities there. We're not there visiting on a regular basis. So what are ways for alumni in those areas to feel like they're making a meaningful, they're doing some meaningful service, or they're having a meaningful interaction with the university? And I think we call them our Knightfluencers, but our social media ambassador program is a way to do that. And those are all relatively low barriers to entry, but I think high engagement for the alumni on the other side.
Great. Thank you.
I saw that, Heather, that program on LinkedIn, and it was really cool the way that you all used additional technology that allowed you to pull together different videos that were shot at a recent, I think it was a football game, whether it was at the game or whether it was people watching the game elsewhere, and string them together and create a TikTok video out of it, or an Instagram short or a reel out of that. And like that, that's part of the next generation of digital strategies that are going to really help schools move forward. So kudos to you and the team there for thinking on that level. All right, Chris, as we wrap things up, let's talk a little bit about what our Alumless listeners can expect in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Ryan, we're excited to announce our second sponsor for Alumless. We have a new software vendor joining us as a sponsor, Alumni Q. Alumni Q would be, if I say this about Protopia, if I was starting in a Heather role, I would bring on Protopia from a platform to engage broadly. But from an event management standpoint and many other components, Alumni Q is the next thing I would do. I think it's the most intuitive platform out there. Alums who are working with it, interfacing with it, love it. But on the back end, it does all the stuff you want it to do. The magic, when we say it's going to connect to your database, it actually does it at Alumni Q. And the CEO and founder of that company is a dear friend and longtime colleague named Steve Rittler. And he'll be our guest in 2 weeks, joining us on Alumless. We're looking forward. He's a guy who understands and does tech, but he speaks alumni engagement language, and he can bridge the two together in great software. So we're looking forward.
An event management software tool that makes complicated events easy, and
exactly.
a really hands-on team that is going to help really customize those complicated alumni weekend, homecoming event schedules that've got all sorts of segments and event codes, a discount, all the things you can imagine. So we're excited to have Alumni IQ, not Alumni Q, join us as a presenting sponsor of Alumless. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I know this is setting some time aside in your busy weeks to check out Alumless, whether you're watching live or you're watching us on LinkedIn or YouTube later on, or whether you picked up the podcast. I would reached out to a new follower on our CMAC LinkedIn page, a woman who lives on the West Coast, and she said she was a devout listener, which was the first time that I had someone use the word devout, which I really loved, Chris. I think we've reached another level with
devout listener. I love it.
Yeah, we have at least one devout listener, and I really like that. So if you are a devout listener, let us know about it. We'd love to hear from you. So. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll be back in 2 weeks with Steve Rittler. And then, of course, we'll be in your podcast feed with our bonus segment with Heather from UCF after the break. So thank you very much. And we'll see you again next time.